With 23.5 million people, Taiwan will be going to polls on 13th of January in what has come to be called a pivotal election. It has been de facto independent since the 1940s from mainland China until 1971 was the official representation or officially recognized government of China at international forums. While its status has changed with the People's Republic of China, or as we now come to call as China, becoming the internationally recognized government at international fora, Taiwan's status has seen only 13 countries today that continue to maintain diplomatic ties with them. Taiwan is a semiconductor superpower. And in the recent past, especially in November, when President Xi Jinping of the People's Republic of China met with President Joe Biden of the United States in California, made it clear that reunification is inevitable. The time frame is unclear. This was in response to the CIA director, William J. Burns, earlier saying that the United States should be prepared by 2027 for the potential invasion of Taiwan. Coming to that, the two leading parties in this Taiwanese election, the Democratic Progressive Party, led by current Vice President of Taiwan, Lai Ching-te, and the Kuomintang, whose presidential candidate, Hu Yu-yi, are locked in a close battle, while a third smaller party, the Taiwan Progressive Party, whose candidate Ko Wen-je, is also in the running for this election. This election with massive geopolitical implications, and sort of to make sense of that, today we have with us Namrata Hasija, a research fellow at the Center for China Analysis and Strategy, and Roger Liu, the Chief Research and Operation Officer at the Research Institute for Democracy, Society, and Emerging Technology in Taipei. Thank you, both of you, for joining us in ThePrint. To kick off the discussion, the first question I have, and I leave this to the two of you to answer from your experience researching this area, is if you could break down the sort of choices put forth for the Taiwanese voters between the Democratic Progressive Party, the Kuomintang, and the Taiwan People's Party, given that the Kuomintang, which is in opposition for the last 8 years, is considered to be China-friendly and has sort of argued that this decision is a decision between war and peace, whereas the current vice president and the candidate for the Democratic Progressive Party has said that we want to maintain status quo. We can negotiate with China, and has, made this sort of political question for the Taiwanese voter in such a way. So if you could just, break it down for us, what are the implications for the voters in Taiwan when they go to the polls on the 13th of January?
So DPP, KMT, and then there's Taiwan's People's Party. So all three are in the running, actually. And like you said, DPP is Dr. Lai, who has also been the premier of Taiwan from 2017 to 2019, and he's in the running. And then you have Mr. Ho, who belongs to the KMT party. He's in the running. And then Mr. Ko Wen-je, who is from TPP. So it's like, people who are familiar with Taiwan's parties, it's like the blue, green, and the white. That's usually, even when we meet friends, we always ask, are you blue or are you, green? That kind of a question is very, common. So now these are the three parties. These are the three candidates. See, you also have to understand a little bit for the people who are listening to the program, the background of the parties. Now, DPP, of course, has the motto has been that they are a pro-independence party. Okay, we can maybe in general, when we talk about it, we know that it's deep green or light green. That's, I'm not getting into all that. But yes, DPP has been a pro-independence party. And then KMT has been a pro, either you can call it reunification or pro-unification party. That's, has publicly acknowledged the 1992 consensus. And then you, of course, have the third party, that's the white party, and that's kind of neither here nor there. I mean, that's how, probably I look at it. Maybe Roger would, have a different opinion because he's a Taiwanese, but, I feel it's neither here nor there, because sometimes, of course, they talk about status quo and Sometimes they also talk about on the same lines as KMT. Now, these are the three parties, and this time, I've been lucky that the last two times when there has been presidential elections, I have been in Taiwan. Like I have been staying in Taiwan, so I have kind of, as an outsider and also as a person who's been working on India, Taiwan, and Taiwan as such, observing Taiwan for almost a decade, I've seen the change. So when I was in 2014, that's the time when the sunflower movement actually started in Taiwan, and so I had seen that change. The professors, my professors, especially because I was studying Mandarin at that point of time in NCCU, initially they would never talk about politics with me. But suddenly I saw a change in them when they started talking about that what's happening in Hong Kong. We will vote for DPP because we do not want the same thing, in Taiwan. And this one country, two systems, the carrot that, every time China hangs is not something that actually works. The kind of, whatever things were happening in Hong Kong at that point of time. And again in 2019, that's when I saw a massive change, especially in the younger generation of Taiwanese. When, it's like more the Chinese have, they put pressure, the more they saw what's happening in Hong Kong. It's like the Taiwanese identity actually emerged more. I think the Chinese, maybe they wanted different results, but I think it strengthened the Taiwanese identity more. In 2019, in fact, in the university where I was teaching, National Tsinghua University, which is in Hsinchu, I saw I would say 80% of the youngsters, especially, who were undergraduate students, they daily they would meet, they would discuss, what's happening in Hong Kong. There would be students who were from Hong Kong, and in fact I spoke to many students also who were from mainland China, that, what do you think about, what's happening, and how, that's going to actually impact the elections. And they said we cannot participate in this, in all these things, even if we, feel for, what's happening in Hong Kong and Taiwan, because they were like, even if we are identified, like one photograph of ours goes somewhere, our families will be, taken to tasks there. But I saw that change in 2019 also, right before the election, and that the result that the Chinese wanted actually was the opposite. I could see that the DPP is kind of, people recognize with it more than what they do with KMT over the period of time. Now, this election also, I'm told that it's, when I'm seeing the, results, in the sense, how the estimates and all, some would say, yes, DPP has a good chance. And again, I think what people are voting for, and here I think Roger will definitely talk about the disinformation campaign that the Chinese are doing. And it's not just the disinformation campaigns, because you mentioned that they are going to come up with new sanctions one day before the election. So it's like impacting the elections. And I also read a study which was done because there's a double think lab in Taiwan, Taipei, which is doing a lot of these especially the influence operations and all. So they actually, I was reading there how they are impacting the farmers also, because they kind of stop buying agricultural products. It's like, they're tightening the screws right before the elections, because most of the farmers, they are dependent on Chinese buying most of their products. So not only disinformation campaign, but they are using everything that's there in that they can do to impact the elections. But here I would also call out that I think this whole facade that they are creating, that vote for KMT because DPP, you will have war if a DPP comes. I think that also we need to study, because I don't feel that now is the time when even if KMT comes, the Chinese will actually stop. So this is also something, a myth that they are trying to say, that, okay, don't vote for DPP, vote for KMT. I feel even that is a facade, because they are not going to stop, whatever they are doing. Yes, it will give it, KMT kind of maybe ticks the boxes, all the boxes that the Chinese, want, pro reunification, accepts the 1992 consensus and all that. And also, the more I think they kind of the disinformation campaign that they are doing, and people in Taiwan are actually, many people have taken up this thing of educating people how to differentiate between, fake news and all that. But still, I think United Front Work Department is all out trying to influence these elections. But let's see what happens actually when the island nation actually goes for vote. But to me, this is the scenario that how maybe things are in this, what I've seen in the last two elections. But I feel the more Chinese will interfere, it's the people will kind of. I feel the result will not be in their favor. But that's what I feel, because that's what I've seen in the last two elections.
Right. And so, if you can sort of build upon that with what Hasija had shared.
Well, thank you for having me. And this is a big topic. So I was expecting that we have some focus on that. For the current election, well, for most of the Taiwanese people, especially, this is another presidential election because as a Taiwanese, we have experienced or we have gone through different elections here in Taiwan. So every time, actually, I still remember when I was a college student, I had the first presidential election in Taiwan in 1996, when the CCP actually launched a large-scale military operations trying to deter the Taiwanese voters from voting the people they don't want. But the Taiwanese people made the opposite choice. So after that, I mean, for every presidential election, they try to, launch some kind of political weapons or military exercise to send a warning to the Taiwanese and try to influence the Taiwanese politics. And in this time, of course, there is no exception for that. But what is different this time is that Taiwan actually has been going through different political transformations. But a new situation that we are facing now is that China is growing stronger and stronger. And the reality or the possible scenario of being reunified into China is becoming more and more prominent for us to consider. So the different department of, military departments or military forces from the US or from the European countries have been sending warnings to their Taiwanese counterparts that China may launch an attack in the year. There are different predictions, either in 2025, 2027, or other years. So this time, again, the Taiwanese people are facing a tough choice between the two parties. The DPP has been in power for 8 years. So that's their weakness, because for the voters, for even the young voters, they grow up with the DPP. So some of them or many of them become a little bit tired of it, all right? DPP has been doing many great things. Well, actually, for the past few years, especially during the COVID years, Taiwan has experienced some economic growth. Taiwan becomes the economic powerhouse, especially with the focus on semiconductor and ICT sectors. And Taiwan has been doing really great in economics or in the prevention and the control of COVID-19. But politics is cruel because DPP has been staying in power for many years. So, if you check the past patterns, it's always KMT for 8 years, 2 terms, and the DPP for 8 years, and then KMT and then DPP. So if we follow this pattern this year, actually DPP is not in an advantage situation. So the close calls is there for the two parties. So the latest prediction for the three parties is that DPP will win by only a very close margin. By winning by DPP will get 6 million votes, while KMT can get 5.2 million votes, and the new TPP can get 2.3 million votes. This is some guess, and people are making bets on that. And the key player here is the TPP. Major Ko-Wen-je actually is trying to carve out his own political space by garnering the votes on the one hand from the Green Party and the other hand from the Blue Party. And he kind of becomes the key minority which can influence the final result of the election. But like you said, China has been trying to influence the final result of election, and they're quite constrained this time. They haven't done anything big this time. So many people just predicted after the election, maybe some military conflict could take place, or there might be some tensions between Taiwan and China. But for now, for most of the Taiwanese, it's still another presidential election that we are going to have, and most of the people are ready to go back to vote, including myself. So we are still waiting for the result, and we will know the result by like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. on January the 13th, Saturday.
Right. So, and I just want to sort of pull a thread that you sort of mentioned at the start, which is you said, in 1996, China, had a military operation to sort of, tell Taiwanese, warning them against certain candidates. And you've sort of seen that sort of play out quite similarly, or at least, people have been raising this thing over the last few months that there have been more number of aircraft crossing, the Taiwan Straits from the Chinese Air Force. There is this aggressive military posture. And then when you combine that with President Xi's very public comments saying that, reunification is inevitable. And also, when he gave that same warning to President Biden, there's been a lot of this sort of conversation that, like you said, Taiwan, China, there's a possibility for conflict. Right? So I just wanted to understand from your point of view, if you can break this down as to why or how likely is something like that, an actual aggressive conflict, and why does China often try to sort of use its tools to influence a vote in Taiwan, when it has multiple options at the table? So, to understand the larger Chinese strategy when it comes to votes when it comes to election season in Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, actually, China has a multi-pronged, policy to influence Taiwan's domestic politics. So for me, I will conclude it to be four things: the stick, the carrot, the network, and the needle. So the stick is the use of military power or the threat of the use of military power. The carrot is to lure the Taiwanese people, including the younger generation, to study in China or to do business in China, to find their jobs in China, or to use the large, vast market for the Taiwanese businessmen to do business there so that they can be influenced in their political stance. But the network and the needle actually are the newer strategies they have developed in recent decades. The network is to use the Chinese Communist Party is trying to organize different networks to reach out to different social strata in Taiwan. Of course, Taiwan has been there are two major ethnic groups on the Taiwan. Well, one is the mainlanders who relocated to Taiwan after 1949 and their descendants, and the other is the Taiwanese. And after after the past few decades, after Taiwan opened up its door to China, Taiwanese people started to establish their social networks with China, doing business there or study there. So this gives the Chinese Communist Party an opportunity to reach out and to infiltrate into the Taiwanese social fabric. And the last thing is the needle. The needle is just like this information warfare, the gray zone operations that it can be viewed as a combination of stick, carrot, and the network. So nowadays, I would say Well, of course, many countries, especially the great powers like the US and the European countries, they make different predictions that China is going to use military power to take over Taiwan and to produce a final solution of the Taiwan issue. But I think most likely military will be at most used as a political mean to force Taiwanese people and the government and authority to accept the terms given by the CCP. They don't want to take over Taiwan mainly by military force. Military force will be used as a deterrence or an incentive to make people to accept their terms. So the most likely scenario that most of people have predicted or talk about is that China may try to stage a small-scale harassment or attack to some of the offshore islands that are controlled by the government of Republic of China, which is Taiwan, and they are going to take some prisoners back to China and use them as hostages, trying to force and send out the signals forcing the Taiwanese people to accept the terms that the CCP is going to give the Taiwanese people. But I think if China is really going to use military force, it will be used in a political way rather than a military one.
Right. And ma'am, if you have anything to add to this, the current tensions across the straits, and I think you're muted, ma'am.
Okay. So for me, I think there's another important factor here, and that's the US. I feel especially, a lot will also depend on the China-US equations. The cross-strait ties are, connected to that China-US relations, because you see the kind of US-China relations that we see now, the confrontation and everything, and that's also getting reflected on the cross-strait ties. And to me, the Chinese will only use military force if they actually use it. That will be the time when they know that the US is not going to come and intervene. To me, I think that's the factor that will stop the Chinese, or that's kind of deterring also the Chinese not to use military force. And the time that they will actually use it is when they know the US is not going to come to intervene. And then the second thing, of course, is that the Chinese are using all other ways to kind of, like Roger said, especially entice or especially influence the youth, because when it comes to cognitive warfare, we also have to understand that influence operations has a huge role in that. And that, of course, the Chinese are doing, because in 2019, I still remember there was a big march against the red media in Taiwan. So, because many of the major media houses in Taiwan have, been bought over by the mainland, by the Chinese. And so that also influences a lot. So influence operation is also that one part, because I still remember there was an interview published way back. I think it's 2020, by one of the think tanks, by a Kikir person, and especially that's directly under their Ministry of Public Security. So he said, we want smart reunification, and military reunification will be one of the last options, and that will be, a problem also for Xi Jinping, that what if he actually does a military attack and he's not able to, win, the US intervenes. So he said we should go for smart reunification. We should identify the areas where we can influence the people on the other side to kind of, reunify without actually attacking Taiwan. So for me, I think US is a big factor when it comes to the cross-strait ties. China-US relations, a lot will kind of filter to how the cross-strait relations also, are there.
Right, and thank you for that. That sort of builds up to my final question, and I'll leave it up to the two of you to decide who wants to answer first. It's a question of the US. In 2021, President Biden ordered the Department of Commerce to do a review of supply chain resilience in the United States. And when it came to semiconductor technology, the Department of Commerce was very clear that the US has no domestic capabilities, especially when it comes to cutting edge semiconductors, and that it relies heavily on Taiwan. Right? When it comes to larger wafer sizes, and this, I think, by law, as per that Chips and Science Act, is 28 nanometer and larger, right? The question then is Taiwan and China globally have, I think, 80 to 90% of the entire world capacity. But saying that, the TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company Limited, is a key player for the United States in ensuring cutting edge tech. So when we come to the question of Taiwan being a semiconductor superpower, and in the larger context of China, mainland China, and the United States, currently in a chip war, how does any reunification or this situation play out, keeping in mind semiconductor politics?
Well, let me take up this first. So you were talking about the 100-day of the supply chain review initiated by the U.S. by the Biden administration after he took office. Yes, but the thing over here is that like that. People are talking about silicon shield. It's very simple. The idea is of silicon shield is that since Taiwan has occupied, Taiwan actually got control of 90% of the mature procedure or the mature process of the microchips of the world. What we're talking about here is the thing smaller than 7 nanometers. So it's a very advanced microchips. So Taiwan accounts for, TSMC actually accounts for 90% of the productions of the world. But, the thing over here is like that. Silicon shield, can semiconductors prevent China from attacking Taiwan? Of course, you have different ideas. Like some people will say yes, some people will say no, because no matter what, they will attack. But I think semiconductor is something that either the US, Taiwan, and China has to consider when they are thinking about a war plan in this region. And I will say that the US has been considering its national interest. So the US actually is capable of producing things, but they have not done it for a long time. So that's why they are trying to reindustrialize. They're going to do something called the reshoring of the semiconductor business. And the US actually is a semiconductor superpower. If you combine everything together, because semiconductor is beyond only the fabs, all right? Semiconductor is a chain that starts from IC design till the OSAT, what they call the OSAT, the original semiconductor assembly and testing. From the upstream to the lower stream, actually, if you combine it together, US still accounts for 59% of the total production value of the world's semiconductor market. That's why US can, ask other countries to do what it wants, because they have something called the long arm jurisdictions. They can punish everyone who use the US patented technology or the way of fabrications. So what the US trying to do is to lure Taiwan to share its capacities back to the US, so that US doesn't have to spend so much time to reindustrialize itself in the fabrication of semiconductors. That's what they're doing. So Taiwan, of course, plays a very important role in this side. Taiwan, the TSMC has trying to build a fab or a foundry in Arizona, as everybody knows, and they are going to start a new fab in Kumamoto, Japan, on February the 24th, and they are going to build up 2 foundries there, and they are also going to build up a new one in Dresden, Germany. So in this sense, Taiwan plays a very important role in the world semiconductor supply chain. And I think by doing that, actually, Taiwan is winning the support not only from the US, but also from Japan and the European countries. And I think that is itself is enough for, the semiconductor and the semiconductor powers of Taiwan to be a deterrent of any possible Chinese military adventurism.
Right. And ma'am?
I agree with Roger, but I also feel that other than the semiconductor, Taiwan's geographic location is very important. And also, that's the first island chain. If China is able to break it, then, then what? Then it's like all the Pacific bases of the US they are exposed. And also we have to understand it's just not the US, but I think a lot of other countries, including India, we also have to really understand that, when we speak about Taiwan, we, sometimes, when in discussions we do speak and people are like, oh, it's okay, it's Taiwan, okay, so what? But it's not just Taiwan, because if that chain breaks, then it's not just Taiwan, then China is not going to stop. Then it's East China Sea, then it's India. We, of course, we are the first ones to kind of go through, the Galwan Valley and what the Chinese are capable of doing, because we've seen that firsthand. So for me, I think, yes, we, of course, talk about semiconductor and what, the way it will kind of shield Taiwan. But I also feel that Taiwan is a democracy. And also we have to understand that it's like, I used to hear all those people saying that today it's Hong Kong and tomorrow it's Taiwan. Sometimes, so today if it's Taiwan, then tomorrow, what's stopping then China once, this thing breaks? But I still feel the biggest deterrent here is the US for the Chinese. That's what I feel.
Right. And thank you both. That was my final question. And, 13th of January is shaping up with the whole world, at least those interested in foreign policy and international relations, looking closely at the results in Taiwan. But before I sign off, any predictions, if any of you want to wear your genie hat and make a prediction for the results?
Well, the most likely prediction, most of the people predicted that the DPP will get the presidency while the KMT will get the majority in the legislative yuan, which is the unicameral Taiwanese legislature. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I also feel because this time the elections are very close. Like 2019, there was no doubt that DPP is coming and it will come the way it should come. But this time, I think it's really, really close. So I also feel that DPP might win with a slight margin, but probably will lose the majority in legislative yuan. Yeah.
Right. Thank you both for your predictions, and we'll await the results at 8 p.m. Taipei time on the 13th of January. Thank you again for joining The Print.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.